Rumi said, "For a long time we lived with the people, but we found none of the satisfaction that we sought among them. Better to hide deep inside, as fire does in rock, as water does in metal." The beginning, or where I have to start from, is my own experience. So these are things I've lived through rather than ideas. We get to the ideas are great to play with, but the raw experience maybe is has a little bit more weight. So excuse me if I speak personally, but I've used that quote many times, thought about it, sat on it, guarded it, and try to solve its mystery. Why, you know, everything Rumi says is true. There's magic in it. Have lived in a kind of community, both here and in Ireland, for 30 years, and always tried to steer that community to have a deep root, or to have some spiritual connection, to have some basic thing that would bring people together, ideally here in the deepest possible way, and elsewhere, let's just live together and get by, and help each other out a little bit. Satisfaction is not found in others. And just like yesterday I was emphasizing that you cannot escape the Dharma, you cannot escape the way things are, the truth of things. If there is fear, anger and jealousy in you, or any one of those things, or desire, or bewilderment, then those things will manifest just as loudly, and probably more loudly, in community, and so will all the others. And there are no human beings who do not have those things, except for Buddhas. And Buddhas are never very keen to live in community. They usually had enough of people. Some hermits refuse to even talk to people. Even people that come on their knees with their foreheads on the floor begging for a blessing. It's like, oh, get out. Finish with you lot. And some teach. And the Buddha himself was supposed to, for a long time, having seen absolute reality, having become completely free, decided it was unteachable and nobody would understand it. So he didn't bother for a while, and then eventually, of course, he did begin to teach. So, knowing that we're all dealing with the inner work, these passions, many people have the idea, the naive and forgivable and almost lovable idea, that if we all get together, it'll help sort out all these inner difficulties, because we'll have the lovely mirroring from each other and all the love and friendship and support the community will offer. Yeah. And then you also have the dark side, and all the things that people don't see about themselves, everybody else can see, but they still continue to contribute their dark side morning, noon and night to the community as their wonderful contribution. And then there's nice ideas like we're all equal, and everyone should have an equal say and so forth, and we'll all have meetings and we'll discuss everything openly, and we'll come to group decisions. Not if I'm involved. Some people take a lot of responsibility on their shoulders. Some people have great ability, the capacity to do things. It comes natural to them. They have the energy to see it through. They're just like that. Or they've been initiated or gone through trainings or through life experience, somehow or other been blessed with that capacity. And other people have not and will not go through those things and didn't have it in the first place anyway. But they're very, very good at finding a community where they can hang out, where they'll be taken care of or tolerated, or even loved. And it's kind of, I should be loved as well. Community, as far as I'm concerned, has to be open to all. So you can't say, well, it's going to be a community for only this kind of people, but not those kind of people. Because then there's something that's being avoided or hidden. So to how to remain open and yet have direction. So when you make your things like what's intentional communities, you'd have some kind of intention. And as I was saying yesterday, it's very difficult to name that. Because things change. The sense of community is missing in the big world outside because there are millions of people living in vast democracies, which are kind of system that sort of works, but also wrecks the world and leaves everybody alienated and separate and out of touch with their fire and earth and water and food sources and so forth, and don't leave somewhere for the children to play that's safe and wonderful. We all kind of know the misery that it's created in the world, as well as perhaps taking a moment to acknowledge the enormous freedom of choice that's been offered by that society. Yesterday I made a big deal about it, that where societies are bound together by survival, have to grow the crops together, have to borrow each other's horse or tools or the mill or something, then they're woven together because they need to be woven together to put some food on the table, just to get the oats and the chapatis or whatever together. Now we are evolving towards something where it seems a tantalizing possibility that people, having survival kind of more or less sorted out, at least in our luxurious comfort zone Western societies, where the pain and the isolation that's brought to the loss of community, loss of connection to each other, loss of connection to the ground, loss of connection to water, loss of connection to the natural world, and the visible destruction of the natural world has left all of us feeling there must be something better. We can get together and create something better. So many people willing to try something, but the big system is there. So can we do something? Can we come together in smaller units? Can we come together in smaller communities? Can we create villages? Can we create possibilities? Can we create a bit of the vision at least together? And it seems like, yeah, of course, we're going to have to try. We're going to have to try. And I don't want to pour cold water on anybody's idealism or anyone who wants to have give this a good lash and have a go at it. And it's going to be happening anyway. But it might be good to pause and look at the pitfalls and what dangers can occur. And so I have an intention, but intentions of the mind have then to be tested out in raw experience. And day-to-day living with other people is the most raw experience you can have. And the more communal and the more entangled you intend to be, the more work it will be for how much satisfaction. You know, we had a few crises here this spring, and it was a divided camp between those who wanted to have all of the mess brought into every misunderstanding, brought into the circle, and trashed out until everybody felt they knew everything about everybody else's business and everybody felt safe. And there were other people who said, we've got a roundhouse to build, and we've got a kitchen that needs a new roof, and breakfast, lunch and dinner to make for everybody, and water to fetch from the well, because we didn't have the pipe water at the time. And all these emotional storms will be like leaves blowing in the wind and composted all by themselves. That was my take on it. In a few months' time, or a few weeks' time even. And not everybody has to be satisfied that everything is being dealt with totally to their satisfaction. And also that one of the things that I've often thought that people look for in community, especially when you come bearing your wounds, which we all have, all of us are traumatized in one way or another. No one's going to escape the nightmare of childhood and get through it. You know, no matter how lovely and beautiful and well-intentioned your parents were, all of us come with those wounds, and understanding is a luxury. It's nice when it happens. You can't expect it of other people. They're so busy with themselves and so busy with what they'd like to get out of community. There are not many people who come with, I don't need to be understood. I don't need to be looked after. I've come to contribute. I need nothing. But if I'm needed, I'm here. It's kind of, you know, mysterious warriors that appear in fairy tales every now and again. Something difficult around here needs doing, I've come to help. I would say 1, 2, 3, not that many people of that caliber have come here, and they have made a difference, each one of them, when they've done that. And for every one of those that arrives, 100 arrive with, these are my wounds, these are my problems, My mother and father didn't take good care of me, so you better do a better job now. Mom didn't take care of me, Dad didn't take care of me. And look, you're not doing a very good job either. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but it is. So I got that from an American community who recognized that that was one of the things people needed to hear on the day one. Actually, they started to write in a letter and send it out to the people before they arrived. Like, if you've got that going on, watch out, because we won't have an awful lot of time for it. We've seen that too many times. So, intentions can be in reaction to the difficulties that we all see in the world. The desire for community naturally arises, perhaps as a vision, as an idea. Many people think I had a great vision of what was going on down here. I didn't. I had a small seed of a thing, and then life took over. And that will probably happen to anybody else who has something that's mind created. So the adjunct to that, or maybe the way forward through that, what can we do about it kind of thing, would be to ask the question, what is natural community? Not something that's formulated out of, well, this is how people should be. Like in our culture, we've had a religion for 2,000 years that said, this is how people should be. And it doesn't really do much about what people actually are like. In Celtic laws, in Ireland, they used to make a lot of different laws for how people actually are. So they had 12 different kinds of marriage. And then there was another model that people have had, you know, we've thrown it out the window now, but a model that said, this is how people should be in love, this is how they should be with babies, this is how families should be, this is how men and women should be together, don't work. So now, our culture, that's just one fragment, not to mention that man's domination of the world and then the takeover of science and technology, has ended up with a culture that's lost. We're destroying the world, we had models that didn't work, everything's pretty much thrown out the window, everybody's super educated intellectually, capable of questioning everything intellectually, coming up with ideas, looking at our history but not looking deeply enough. And throwing ideas around and like, this could work and that could work, but untested. The only things that are tested are things that have been around for thousands of years. And here we have a problem, because indigenous people's been living in their forests, been living in their jungles, living in their deserts, living in their plains for thousands of years doing the same thing, but we don't actually really want to be like them because they were bound together out of survival need. Their customs arose simply, you know, the beautiful carpets came because all they had was sheep, and then they gave rise to a fantastic nomadic culture of making beautiful things from the one commodity that they had. So that becomes like, you know, the bags, the camel trappings, the carpets, beautiful cultures, the milk and sheep, maybe camels, something like that. Now we have everything. And those were tough places to be, and no one really wants to go back to that level of work, that level of the hardship of it, though it has incredible, undeniable beauty. I still have a great love for all these things that are where people have hand spun and hand woven, the same people living directly from their bit of ground. So those things have kind of maybe enduring values and something that can be admired and emulated and borrowed from. But nobody really wants to go back to the hard work of it all, including like where our ancestors would come from, or mine from peasant Ireland, you know, trying to grow potatoes and oats. Very beautiful culture full of courtesy and neighborliness and cooperation, and all the food came from the ground. Nobody had the word organic because it just was. Everybody milked their own cow, made their own butter, do all those things. But it was really, really hard. And my parents were like many other people and said, let's go to England and get an industrial job and get a wage with money, and then we can buy a house, and then we won't have to be dependent on all our neighbors and all our uncles and aunties and have all these thousands of relationships that make our society work. And so the society that was a peasant society, really living on the ground, peasant, pay, you know, of the land, did not provide a freedom that some people wanted, an individual freedom. So now here we are, roundhouse teepee, full of individuals with choice, with education, with background, with ideas, with interests, and we're not going to go back to that. Or maybe a few people will, or maybe we will have to. But what many people aspire to is more a golden dream. It's not like, let's work 16 hours a day together and hang out together, and then we'll have food. and it'll be great. And for many, many thousands of cultures and thousands of millions of people who've lived on Earth, that was it. Let's grow food beautifully. Let's share it beautifully. Not everybody did all these things beautifully, but many people did. And then over hundreds of years, a certain workable, tried and tested, naturally evolved grace, manner, courtesy, customs, culture arise. That can't be reinvented by a bunch of, white-skinned intellectuals or any other kind of skin either, who are on the run, wounded, traumatized, lost and lonely because the culture that they were brought up in was off the tracks. Because the culture they were brought up in, instead of educating you to be a natural member of the natural world, having some of the grace that a tree or a blackbird or a hawthorn bush or a stream of water or a sandy beach would have, instead becomes a thinking thing on a stick. Because you were sent to school at 5 years of age and we're told, that wild part of you, that part of this, like wild nature, we don't like that kind of brambly, crazy, leafy, flowering, fruiting, wild thing following its own adventure, running with the seasons, laughing with the rain. You have to sit at this desk and learn how to be a responsible member of this society. And in 1 hour's time, we'll tell you to do something else when the bell rings. And that's the education system, which I don't want to go into right now. But just to give you an idea, that happened to most of us probably here, sitting here around the age of 5. It certainly happened to me. And I was terrified, and a part of my soul ran off, and I never even thought about it until years and years and years later, until I was in my 40s. I thought, what happened to me, that part of me that didn't like all that? It just, no. That's now we had the story of Cinderella, that doesn't fit in. Carrying the ashes out, doing the humble jobs, never gets asked to the best party. Never has the right dress. Doesn't say the right things, doesn't fit in. But her 2 sisters are so suave, they know how to swing it. So that innocent, shy, beautiful, tender, sensitive, doesn't want to be shouted at, but can see the flowers, can feel the music of a field of grass and the wild bushes on a summer's day, and whose body becomes liquid with the ecstasy of that. That part of you is like, we don't need that in our society. So that's the side we come from, right? And that's the part of us that is like, where's home? Where's that lovely place it used to be? Where's the fire where I am welcome, all of me? Where's the place where I can sing and so forth? You have many people come down here with a degree in this, that, or the other. Some of them 2 degrees, or PhD, MAD, as Krishnamurti called it. We still, can you cook dinner for everyone today? And it's like, what? Cook dinner? How many people? 60. Oh, it's like, never done that in my life. Right? So, community involved. Say, yeah, 60 people, no problem. Could you help me, please? Yeah, I just need 1 helper. Let's go. Simple. Yeah. Or someone who can see, like, oh, there's going to be a meeting tonight. We're going to need firewood. And then 4 hours before, gets to it, brings a pile of firewood, slams it down. This is the firewood we're going to need tonight. That guy or girl, whoever it is, probably never washes the dishes. But they go to the forest, find a dead tree, cut it up and lug it back. They can do that. Bam. Maybe they're big and strong or something, or just have an eye for it. Or maybe they don't like being around people, but they like going to the forest and bringing something back. So what we've encouraged here, and this might not necessarily be of use to you in your own adventure with community or eco-villages or any kind of village, or rediscovering tribe. What we try to do here is leave people alone long enough that they're not reinforcing the program. This is the timetable. This is what you've got to do. This is your job. There's your name on the list. Don't forget to turn up at 3:30. Your shift ends at 5. All of that school stuff. People got quite bewildered. So there's no structure at Spirit Horse. What we're all doing, what we're supposed to be doing. But let people have enough time to remember some bit of their own nature, of their own, what they like doing, what they love doing, what comes natural. Like when you're a kid and you're playing and you're making a den, right? And it's like, let's make this thing. You know, we found this place in the woods or in the backyard. If we didn't have any woods, I used to do it anyways. Nothing was more fun than making a little house. It's like, there's some old boards here and no one's used them for ages, and maybe we can just borrow them, and then we'll get something else and put that over it, and that's be the roof. And then anything that's missing, you just kind of make believe it's there, or, you know, this will be a table, yeah. And it's fun. It's like nobody's saying, hey, you have to go off and play house for 1 hour and come back in 7 minutes and don't be late for lunch. It's like, and here this village got built by that same thing, as far as I'm concerned, of like, we're just playing house. Like, we could make this here. Hey, let's live in a teepee. No, they're too leaky in Wales. Okay, let's try yurts. Oh, they're a bit warmer and better. Yeah, well, let's try a bit of intense, because they got a nice like feel to them when you stretch out the canvas. And oh, these don't work either because it's always windy and rainy. Okay, let's build a roundhouse. Okay, the roundhouse doesn't work because it's you know, it's all right in the summer, but let's make one that works in the winter. And it's just people sitting around having a chat in the evenings, saying, "Are you free for the summer?" "No, I've got to go back to work." "Okay, who's hanging around?" "Oh, I can be here for a month." "All right, let's build something." And yeah, okay, so we forgot to tell the planners about all this enthusiasm, but luckily we're down the far end of a little tiny nook of land that has, you know, not really been overused, so you can't really dry things down here. So there was a little bit of privacy, a little bit of seclusion. Oh, have I messed up the mic? No. And that enthusiasm, that ecstasy, that's only an example, really, because if you're going to build a village, you have to do a lot of building. That's an example of like how things can get done where it's fun and it's playful and it's childlike and it's innocent. It's that part of us that was told not to do something, and it's still being told not to do something because it's kind of like not really frowned on very well by local councils and governments and so forth, because it looks like you're just a bunch of wild children that have gone feral, you know, and you're probably not even paying tax or something. And then what normally happens is that natural urge. You see a cave and you want to make a nest in it. That natural urge is taken away, and then later on we have architects and building contractors and mortgages and banks and firms, and we're buying our house, but we're going to have to work for 35 years to pay for it if you're an ordinary working person. And somebody else runs off with all the money and taxes you in a way. That's what a mortgage is. Taxes you for wanting to have a home, or makes it even illegal for you to have that spontaneity. Even if your structure is zero impact, should we say, or, you know, 1% impact. Even if you don't want to build a big concrete box. And most people don't really want those big concrete boxes. People come down here and fall in love with these simple structures which cost 1% of what those, maybe the homes they come from. Now, I'm not telling people how to live or what your house should look like or anything like that, but just to be aware that we are in recovery from a society that has square-boxed our natural wild souls, and that what is it that we're looking for when we come together and want to live more naturally, or live closer to the earth, or live more, you know, not want to destroy the earth so much, and what are we looking for in that companionship? And what I've loved is when people bring that childlike, original energy, which has nevertheless matured into some kind of adult masculine and adult feminine that has ability and capacity, sees what needs doing, and just does it, and isn't childlike there, waiting to be patted on the head every time they do something good. You know, "Oh, can I stay here and have a discount? Can I live for the whole summer here? I washed my own plate yesterday." More, you know, where's the adult says, things need doing around here. Some people here need some help. Some people here are really capable. Let's take care of things. Let's move in. That needs doing. This needs doing. We had a phrase here, like, if you see a job, it's yours, rather than like waiting for. We should all be doing our fair share of something. So I would either advocate throwing all those fair share, equality, democratic ideas out the window, or else just warning that there's a little bit of grief to be felt, because it's not going to work out any of the plans you have. People are just naturally wild creatures, and unless you corral them and put them into the square box, scheduled, tell them what to do each hour of the day, and use that kind of Germanic approach, which has been used and does work in many alternative communities. It's okay. Many people tell me what to do. Give me structure. When am I supposed to be there? What am I supposed to be doing? I'll be here. I'll go there. That's okay. I'm not. If that works for you and that's what you want, and you're willing to go down that way. But the adventure that called me and what I've worked with here, and it hasn't always worked out all the time, is that to nourish that original ecstasy, so that people are only doing what they really like to do. Yesterday morning, we had quite a bit of fun. A lot of new people came down here this year to spend the entire summer with us. We're telling what to do, what's the plan? And 2 months later, there's people singing, joking, and bashing away in the kitchen. And that's the kitchen I've always looked for, where the people who are cooking want to be cooking, and someone sees that the knives need sharpening and just start doing it. And the banter can tell you whether the food's being cooked nicely or not. Everybody's, the talk is light. Don't want heavy talk in the kitchen. Just dun 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 dun. What do you think? Yeah, oh, you're so silly. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, lunch is being cooked very nicely. And if it takes an extra hour, it doesn't matter what time it arrives. That the banter, the silliness, and the secret depth of natural communities, where you can feel it in your belly when it's happening, and then everybody gets connected. And it's not a mind thing. I'm not being understood. That person insulted me yesterday. All that blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really matter. Because a feeling in your belly of like, it's okay. This is ancient. This is rooted. It's tribal. It's natural. It's wild. And some people will do 40 times, literally, more work or getting things done than other people. And that's just how it is. So what you could do is form your own eco-village with only the ones that do the 40 times more than everybody else. But something happens that one of them will have to be the lazy one, because you can't have a village without a lazy person in it, or without a village idiot. If you've got a village and it's got no village idiot, then it's not a village. It's just a little thing that's going to fall apart very quickly. That's something else. That's like a lodge, or your own little cult, which is great, or a separate bunch of warriors, or a temple, of people who are doing something very specific. But a community has to include everybody. Like human beings come in all shapes and forms and all sizes and all ages and all capacities. And, some people can't walk properly, and some people are very little and haven't learned to do anything yet and have to be looked after. And some people are busy mums, and some people are young, strong, single guys, but they haven't learned who they are yet. And other people are, elders, and they're not able to do it anymore, but they did it once upon a time, and they could bless or help. All that crazy mixture has to somehow be going on. Here, Sparrow Horse, we did not try, after 30 years, we built a village, we say. We have 13 permanent structures and a camping field full of yurts and teepees and what have you. We did not yet attempt to live permanently together. Partly because we couldn't, having had lots of very friendly negotiations with planners, couldn't get that through the books yet. But even if we could get it through the books, which I think we can, through lots of red tape and friendly negotiations, I don't think we're ready for it. In fact, it sounds a bit wild, and forgive my language, but I don't think the white man's ready for it. I think people from this dominant culture that are so wounded and so broken, so traumatized, so many thousands of miles away from home, they're not ready to live together. And if they do try, they'll end up having all this blah blah. What might work, we were talking a little bit about it yesterday very briefly, is that people buy land together, and you live in your patch, you live in your patch, you live in your patch, and we have as little to do with each other as possible, but we collaborate nevertheless when the chips are down, or when there's opposition, like when you have to deal with authority, perhaps. It's much easier to deal with authority if there's 130 of you committed to something. So, who thinks we should do that? Yeah, okay. Who could translate that? Oh, let's find the lawyer. Can you translate that, please? And write a letter to them, and then this person, that person, the other. Could you write an official letter? Could you talk to the local council? Could you write to the Welsh Assembly? Could you, let's translate it into their language, but just make a point that it's not that easy to tell us what to do. Now, I'm not starting a big revolution here. someone just said, the only thing that will do is a pitchfork revolution. Let's take back the land. And I was like, yeah, in theory that could be fun. But we're not talking about that so much as what it would take to really create a new but deeply remembered natural original way of being, where the spirit moves, and that is secretly what people are looking for. That part of you that has not been educated, you can still use the education, can still use the capacity to write, build, make, create, but in the service of something that's wild and natural, and that if that's not there, there won't be any satisfaction in it, because you won't be living according to your own nature. You just have invented something. And then the question is, what is our own nature? And then that becomes where the society, the attempt at an eco-village, shall we call it? I never use that word, but somehow or other somebody put it on the website and I'm still up to it. Has a root that is as deep as the roots of the trees, that is as old as that goes back to a place where we are living according to our nature, we are being ourselves, not being coerced in something, and that hopefully in itself would be enough that we would then take our place as rightfully, correctly, beautifully, as part of the natural world, and not find ourselves in this square box world working against nature, destroying nature, and not knowing how to stop. You know, like, probably most of us here have got houses, and cars, and switches and buttons, and, you know, we're still using the fossil fuel and the nuclear, whatever, and we don't really know how to get out of it. And many people here would love to. We get plenty of letters from people saying, "Oh, I hear you're living in roundhouses and teepees. Yeah, I'm coming next Wednesday, you know, with my 2 kids, and I'm here forever. Yeah, I don't want to be part of that other world." It ain't that easy. So in the transition thing, like, there isn't thousands of square miles of wild nature for us to experiment with. There's tiny patches of land like this maybe, or you might be able to scramble together, you know, a couple of million quid and buy something for your community, or get together in 3 or 4 people and just buy a patch of land. But if you're living in Western Europe, to the best of my knowledge, anywhere in Western Europe, you won't be allowed to do much on it. I mean, we're speaking here, my experience is Britain and Ireland. Neither country allows you to do anything. And then waiting until all the politicians decide that it's a good thing that people live from that wild, natural, ecstatic part of themselves. What's the chances of that? It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen at all. I mean, it's kind of strong talk, but I've always recommended people just go right ahead and do whatever Spirit tells you to do. To live according to your nature, like whatever and it could be very unreasonable. The world is full of reasonable people doing lots of reasonable, efficient stuff. I'm more interested in the wild and unpredictable and unknowable. Like, you know, people ask me when we first built this village, "Shiv, what are we doing? Why are we doing this?" I was like, "I don't know. I'm too busy doing it. Let's come on, grab a hammer." It turned out later, if we hadn't been in such a rush, we wouldn't have slipped through a planning loophole. But, you know, I didn't know that at the time. There's something about providence, that if we could find that of the spirit way of moving and acting, that suddenly things can happen, and suddenly there's an enormous amount of energy. So I know there are other communities where I had people come here and say, well, in the other communities, they tell us we have to work from 9 till 12, you know, and then we know where we stand, and then we're free the rest of the day. I said, well, I'm not going to tell you to do that. I would like breakfast to happen, and I would like a beautiful supper to be prepared, and I would like firewood to be cut, and I would like some help roofing our roundhouse, but I'm not going to tell you when to do it and how to do it. I'm just waiting for, and it does happen occasionally, and it did happen for a while. There's days where everybody wants to be part of something, and other days where the energy gets a little bit lost. But I'm waiting. But there's a part of the male and female psyche that has a warriorship and a heroism in it, that wants to do something, not because it's like a convenient, easy, I can get by on this way, but because of the magnificence of throwing your energy into something that's bigger than you and greater than you, and makes you grow to become like it. And I do think that's natural, but it's a natural thing that has to be maybe blessed and nurtured. So let's go over here for a minute. That our community, just to put our cards on the table a little bit, started out just as myself and a few friends trying to put on retreats in tents in wild places in nature instead of renting houses, but spiritual retreats, Buddhist stuff, ceremonial stuff, ritual stuff, what people call shamanism. It's nothing to do with shamanism, but essentially people going deep into themselves for like a period of 10 days, and bathing in the waterfall and meditating and doing ritual all night long, and telling stories and sitting by the fire and sitting on the earth, being in a circle, living, breathing, eating together, but always keeping it holy, and maybe having stories from the real perennial wisdom cultures, and the Sufis' finest poetry, and singing songs in the evening, relaxing a little bit, in the mornings have lots of meditation and so forth, and interaction and searching and soul searching, and then doing the most exquisite, beautiful rituals together, where you're praying to water, praying to fire, making offerings to the earth, going out at night, carrying little tiny boats to the top of the mountain, putting them on the lake in the pitch black, tripping over each other and watching the lights go off, and offering it all up to the gods, and in the hope that the gods would think it's a good show, and using up all of our human energy, not to be understood or be recognized or have our problem solved, but to move beautifully, just to be involved in something that the human being's doing, something that's so gorgeous that the spirit might like it. And you do that kind of mad, crazy, totally inefficient stuff that's more or less disappeared from anything remotely to do with the origins or the presence of a Western democratic society. All of that, that was stamped out long ago by missionaries and so forth. That wild, inefficient thing that all cultures used to have. Then something starts to happen, and you start to have an ancient and primordial energy released. Not always that gets things done, but that did provide a source of understanding and inspiration. And suddenly we do understand each other, because you're seeing people in their rawest, wildest, most untamed, most uneducated natural form, and it's inspiring, rather than having the rational and making sense. And by the way, that's another thing, about trying to organize groups of people. The world is tired of people making sense instead of living from the spirit. There's no flowers out in that meadow there. There's no little tree creepers or blackbirds that are like doing it from the manual. It's all ecstatic. And we know that we've been cut off from that ecstasy, and we would love to return to it. That's our home. So the other thing is, a village has to be home, right? And I'm no Irish scholar, but I do live in Ireland a lot of the time. And there's so many place names in Ireland called Bally, or Bolia in Irish, which is always translated as village. But I believe that the better translation is home. So it would be, eco-home. And then to get rid of the Latin language, which came from the conqueror, it would be nice to find a more anciently rooted language from people who were never dominant, for people who never conquered anybody. So, the Romans and so forth, and even maybe the Greeks are okay. We could go with that. But what would be an Anglo-Saxon word for it? So we don't say eco-village, we say something that's Anglo-Saxon. Home would be okay. What would we replace the other word for? What would be another description? Now you're all looking like I'm really crazy, but it's just to find another language which is part of reclaiming who we were in the original days. 2,000 years ago, before you started this pilgrimage looking for somewhere cool to hang out with your friends and sit by the fire again. So any offers?
Home and hearth.
Yeah, hearth home. That would be. There's Anglo-Saxon. Could be straight out of Beowulf. Which, if you want to know what I'm talking about, by the way, just listen to Seamus Heaney reciting Beowulf. And it's not exactly the language of the heart, but it's getting there. It's the language of people living close to the earth, the timbered harp, of people who made things with their hands and so forth. Now, they're all busy killing each other and fighting as well, so we're not saying, oh, this culture's perfect over here and this one's no good. But there are many, many things to be aware of when you're trying to remake a culture. Now, if you just say, oh, we're going to build a nice village and all live in it, yeah, but what is the culture that's going to live there? Because the reason why you want to do that is because you've had enough of the mainstream culture. But we're the first people, maybe, on earth that really had to deeply question and say, we are full-time members of a culture that is visibly, right in front of its own face, destroying the earth. We all know that part. And we don't know how to stop doing it. Like, so what is wrong with our culture? Yeah, okay, we don't want the last, shark or dolphin to be wiped out. We don't want the last elephants to disappear. We all know that. That's simple. But how did we get into this mess? Where did it originate? So if you could find like where things went wrong originally, where did Western culture go off the rails originally, then you'd be really onto something, wouldn't we? And then it'd be, well, how do you make a new culture? That would be another amazing question. Now all those questions got asked down here. Some of them even got answered after I met a man called Martin Prechtel. Genius 30 times over. But like those would be like the deeper questions, rather than what kind of insulation shall we use, or which alternative technology shall we adopt, or so forth. To know where the whole thing went wrong, and to maybe have some contact with that innate, natural, deep longing, that the original loneliness that so many people feel like, I want to find my tribe and the hearth home. And where would I be welcomed as I am, with all my craziness, without sorting my personality out, without being a tidy person, without saying the right things, without having to learn what the latest PC speech is. And that's a wild possibility, and one that we explored here, but explored during special times. And then have a bit of ordinary life, hanging out together, building, fixing, cooking, doing regular things, and then go back to doing retreats, deep time. And the thing that I found that everybody's willing to do, amazingly enough, is what people have always been willing to do for the last tens of thousands of years, and that's spend some time in ritual, spend some time talking to the other realms, or the gods, or the spirits, and offering them something from the human world. Whether it's a dance and a feast, a way of making the fire, a way of speaking. All these, you can see here, all these altars and so forth. This is all part of the men's paraphernalia, where the boys get together and do their holy stuff. And over there, there's where the women go for their time. So we can have like just a male sacred time and a female sacred time. And what happens here, at the best of times, in the height of summer, is that the women go there, the men come here, and then after we've had a little bit of fun and start to miss each other a tiny little bit, if that happens, then they come together, and the spark of the female and the male come together, which is not necessarily about men and women, and not, by the way, about defining anybody's sexuality. But just in ritual spaces, certain rituals and certain times require a polarization of masculine and feminine that was there before human beings were even invented. So it's not about like telling anybody what to do with their sexuality. It's feeding the polarity we find in ourselves, in our human societies, into ritual, to make, if you like, a display for the gods, or just to make something that smells and tastes and feels good. That is available to everybody. That does not require you to be a great meditator. That does not require you to believe in God or not believe in God. It does require you somewhere or other to have some reverence for the earth, for this great drum that we're on, and not want to destroy it. But that's innately built into you in the first place, because everybody has this body, and this body is a mysterious, vast source of intelligence, and is itself sourced from the Great Mother herself. I say make a big deal about that yesterday, so I'll rush through it tonight. This afternoon, I mean that that the religion that everybody can be part of is pagan, of the earth. Everybody knows that, like, there's the food. Well, we're the ones who eat it. There's a sacrament taking place. All societies knew that. Should not kill, but we do, to eat. We're involved in some, as Hafiz said, some, what do you call it? Blessed calamity. Okay, on the back, now that we got there, that there's a great loss in our culture. Individually, collectively, the world is paying a terrible price. The beautiful earth is being burnt and torn apart in this greed and rush, often engineered by very smart, very intelligent, very clever, very capable people whose natural abilities have been harnessed in an almost demonic way. But if we could find this route back down to something natural, if we could feel the pain and grief, sadness, loneliness, separation together, if we could recognize how difficult our situation is, rather than coming with solutions, new ideas. I see some people talking about solutions until they've nearly murdered every elephant in Africa. Till people have the weirdest plans, solutions, rather than, I don't know what to do. I'm part of a culture that is destroying everything that I loved as a child, and I see it in front of my eyes. I'm sad about it. I'm angry about it. And when you're really prepared to feel it that deep down and say, okay, well, if you can feel it and you can feel it and I can feel it, let's do something, and start there with a bucket of tears. That would be like really, bam, that would be a solid foundation, rather than, oh, we've got eco, techno, this will, and we're going to use the same technologies they had in the pyramids. Maybe that wouldn't be such a bad idea. But first of all, to recognize how wounded we are. And then recognize how lost and wounded the authorities are when you put in your application to do something beautiful and magnificent. And I look at it and go, this is beautiful and magnificent. You're not going to get away with this. Like, where exactly will the light switches go? We need to know. And the insidious thing going over the world right now, we were worried about it a long time here. We did manage to slip through planning loops, but amazing how many, until you actually do something, you don't realize. But in Britain anyway, as soon as you start behaving like a free person, there's a lot of authorities want to know exactly what you're doing. A lot of different departments. Apparently all these local councils are strapped for money. You could be fooling me. They're driving all over the place. They got a lady for this and a man for that, and two guys come down to look at this, and somebody else wants to know about that, and they've all got forms to fill out, and they fill out forms for other people's forms, and you can talk to their supervisor, and their supervisor comes down. A lot of people are like, oh, you're sitting around in a teepee. We need to know all about that. You don't have fire in there, do you? No. You don't bathe in the streams, do you? No, no, no. Don't drink water out there, do you? No. You don't pee in the grass, do you? No. No. I'm serious.
How do you deal with that?
That's what I'm going to say. So, like, how I deal with it is like, right, I've had enough of this. I'm just going to go up there and carry on and leave the ladies in the kitchen talking. But sometimes I've sat down and said, look, can we have a real conversation for a minute, you know? Like, do you actually believe this stuff you just said to us? Because, we can be well behaved while you're here, but when you leave, we're just going to go back. My children are here. I'm going to feed them, and I'm going to give all these other people the same food I give my kids. That's our health and safety. We don't really need you to investigate the cracked tile on our teepee floor. Cracked tile on a teepee floor. Been told off about it 3 years in a row. So, oh yeah, we get that fixed, yeah. But like, if we're making food for our own kids, we're not gonna like serve some rubbish to somebody else. So you can't be saying, look, we're all cooking, we're all in love here. We're doing something beautiful. We cook together and eat together and have a good time. Why do we need to be investigated? Oh, well, if you're charging money for anything. So, well, I might be charging a bit here and there, but the whole... Anyway, what I wanted to say was there are all kinds of people that will come along in the name of health and safety and tell you what you can't do. And I've always thought, this is the new... These are the servants of Sauron at the end of the day. This is the new horn demon. Are you safe? Are you healthy? Are you safe? Yeah, we're doing fine. If you could just leave us alone, please, you know. And now we've got a whole new epidemic, pandemic, of all these people doing us wonderful favors, making sure that we're all safe to protect our vulnerable people. So I don't want to go into all that, but I do have, young children, between 16 and 24, and like begging them, like, have your eyes open. I don't know what's going on in this world. I grew up as a teenager in the 70s, where this kind of seems like a magical era now compared to what's going on. I went off hitchhiking to India when I was 18, and the world was a free place. I went through Afghanistan, Pakistan. The world was... Walked into India without a visa and nothing, and nobody knew whether I was alive or dead. My poor mother was praying for me, and God help rest her soul. She probably died of anxiety. And the world was like a place you could have an adventure in. And now this world where everybody's mapped, and these things are not it. So anyway, that was an aside. How to deal with authority is a difficult thing. I would suggest that an eco-village these days should have a team of lawyers, and at some point or other to challenge the system. But better to challenge the system inside. But okay, like I don't want to be sort of trying to start some revolution or something like that. But if there was going to be one, if 200 people would all build their little roundhouses, simple little houses that cost 3,000 or 4,000 quid, all together in the same place, even if you had to raise 2 million to buy a big piece of land, that would be a real revolution. And just did it. Even if they send the bulldozers in and knock them all down, it would still be a beautiful gesture. And it would demonstrate immediately going back to that innocent childlike den building, let's make a little nest, and yeah, see what the big authorities are going to do about it, and to obviously not to get violent about anything or anything, just to build and do things with as much of that natural love and ecstasy as possible. Not only that, but having a common enemy, which is the world that has taken away these freedoms bit by bit, every day, a little bit more. There'd be the adventure of rediscovering what freedom tastes like. Even if you are just going to be another tribe that gets obliterated by the conquerors, at least you were being yourself while you were at it, and dress beautifully and speak beautifully and make the houses beautiful, and just let beauty be the protectress. I'm not saying it won't work. It could be a disaster, but to be involved in a beautiful disaster would be better than slavery. But we're making a little film today, but we're just to record what things that are said. So I'm not telling you all go out and give the British authorities a hard time. If you can think of a better way, or have a smarter idea, and work with the local government and so forth, yeah, I do try here, and you should try too. But it's not the same as remembering what freedom really tastes like. What it was like to be riding that horse across the plain, or walking through the forest in the natural ancient times that our body still is part of, because our bodies and our nature has not evolved at all. It takes, millions of years for things to change, well, thousands and thousands of years. So just because you suddenly invent gadgets, or suddenly have TV and cars and mobile phones and computers, people think, oh, we've evolved. No, we haven't. We just culturally switched around, and technology has gone crazy, and we can quite easily see that the culture is not mature enough to handle the technology. The technology is totally and utterly amazing, but that technology is, if anything, a sin growing out of a culture that's not able to hold it. And ancient people knew that. You can't steal everything from the ground. As an Irish-speaking guy, I call him a druid really, he's able to see the fairies and things. That comes to visit me occasionally in Ireland. Liam, his name is, and we sat down talking once. He doesn't do, you know, he doesn't talk big, whatever, but he does have a degree in archaeology. But when I walk the land with him, he'll show me where there's paths of energy and all the rest of it. I can't see them, I'm not sensitive enough, but when I'm with him, I can see them. He said, no, we can't go there. This must be an ancient ceremonial place. Like, can you feel what's over there? He said, today we can't go there, maybe later. He's like, so sensitive to the land. But we sat down and had a chat. I said, yeah, I can feel it. You definitely know something, because when you're with me, I can see it too. And he said, look, the way it is, Shivam, the more metal you take out of the ground, the more you lose your soul. That's what it is. I know if someone could name it in the formula, that's pretty good going. You know, considering he hasn't, you know, gone off and maybe been with the shamans and all the rest of it. The more metal you take out of the ground, the more you lose your soul. And there's our culture, mining everything out of the ground as fast as possible. And it's a kind of, it's dead culture. Because we all know the bad news, and the good news is we'd like to do something about it, which is probably why you came to this talk. But then the pitfalls are, we have to be able to look at our own culture and see how wrecked it is. And some people are, including Erica, those who know her, always saying, you can't keep keeping this bad news. You know, no, life is beautiful, life is wonderful. And yeah, it is, but we have to be able to see some things for what they are, and then see the effect that has had on ourselves, the damage we have done to ourselves, and the damage that has been done to us. And then, hopefully, Kurikindi is going to come down next week. He's always saying you can't use the enemy's tactics, so you still have to stay with your own love and light while being able to see the depth of the darkness that goes on, and then form these new friendships and new alliances and new collaborations, and make what Thich Nhat Hanh called the next Buddha, a village of people living peacefully on earth. And no one knows how it will work because there's not enough room for us all and all the rest of it. But still, somehow here in this place, it's an experimental kind of village that never was really meant to happen. It wasn't Shivam's vision, like, let's make a village happen. I wanted a retreat place where people would come and meditate or do deep ritual stuff, and or enlightenment intensives, or be with my Tibetan Buddhist teachers and things. But I wanted it to be out under a waterfall in nature, and God knows how we ended up with the valley with 2 waterfalls and lots of wild woods. That's another story. And it wasn't because Shiv's a millionaire and just bought the whole thing. It came because we came here and planted a few teepees and started doing something, like absolutely committed. I was no way back from here. I burned all my bridges when I came here. What do I want to say? That wasn't the thread. That there did arise, it just attracted it. Just for some reason or other, people came here and demanded that this was a community, and started using that word, and said this is a village, and started using that word, and then they brought their friends around, so their kids at certain times of the year when there was an open invite, and that's what really flowered and burgeoned. And then luckily people did the deep retreat stuff, and then brought a bit of that, so they shared that time with each other. So then when it was just like, fun time, relaxed time, dance time, party time, like we had this weekend, tribal dance and drum, they'd already done, they'd been on pilgrimage together, or they'd done enlightenment intensive together, or they'd looked into each other's eyes for hours on end and spoke the truth, or they'd been servants of a beautiful ritual experience that had some exquisite things in it, so they get to experience each other in that wild, crazy, natural way, with some faces painted or wearing our feathers or whatever the style was. And amazing, by the way, in this very lodge here, how many times we've done this. Guys, we're day 3, on day 2 into a ritual space, and it's like, we've got to start again. What are we going to do about getting out of this, our white man world? How do we start off with taking all our clothes off and covering ourselves in mud, and then we'll do face painting? And with guys, at least, it's kind of like, is that idea too strong for you or something? And they're usually like, nah, let's do it. And then 15 or 20 minutes later, or an hour later at the most, you have a bunch of guys looking like they could have just run out of the Papua New Guinean forest, and they're going off to meet a load of women who have been doing something vaguely similar, and then you have just turned the clock back thousand years, only for a moment, in a playful way, an enactment of wildness. But, you know, if you get a bit of the song right, you get the drums right, you get some of the stamping right, you suddenly have a tribe of women who've gone feral for at least an hour, maybe 5 days, and a tribe of guys, and we don't even touch each other or say any word or make any sense or do anything at all whatsoever in terms of exchanging ideas. No one's allowed to use the English language or any other language, only the language of dance and ritual and stand. So you have to learn to stand and dance and move. That's not a formula exactly, but that's the kind of moments you can have where you're sharing something that makes no sense, that can't be categorized, but has an intense beauty to it. And then the spirit starts to come up with ideas. The next thing to do, pow, suddenly like wham, the next thing we're going to do is this, and then the next thing we're going to do is that, and suddenly the spirit's moving, and you're saying things that are, you know, inspirational. And then the morning's wiser than the evening. That you have to sort of review it all on Monday morning and decide, well, did any of that, you know, workable, whatever, and then make some pretty sober decisions about what we're going to do next. That's an extremely brief rundown of one of the ways we accidentally stumbled on, where you can remake culture, strip away years of conditioning, and find yourself doing things in an ecstatic fashion. Bringing an artistic creativity that moves into all aspects of life, into the music and the jokes and how you cook supper together, or how you cook lunch together. And without that experience, however brief, of an anciently rooted thing, then it's a danger of there being too much mind, too much trying to make ideas reality. So that's to come from somewhere else, not think up, you know, solutions. So there's something as like they say in Hantayo, if it's not of the spirit, it's not Indian. And it'd be a bit like that. If it's not of the spirit, it doesn't really belong to us. It's not the natural self. It's not us being our wild natural selves, and then it's not going to be us being a natural community that has some wildness in it, and it won't be able to relate to the wild world. And many people come down here, and the first question is like, where's your gardens, your polytunnels, and where you're growing food and so forth? Well, so actually, the most important thing for us at the moment is just let the forest grow wild and see what nature looks like, you know. And there's, you know, we're buying food. I would love it if we get to the point where we're farming and gardening, but I'm also quite proud of the fact that we're not farming and gardening, where everything here is just wild nature. And yeah, okay, sooner or later we've got to solve the food problem, or have a better relationship with it. Maybe just slaughter sheep and eat them, but we can't do that either because it's illegal. The best thing that we was just this summer, we just came here in April, just setting things up, just tidying up the place, because we let it go quiet during the winter, and there'd been a whole long winter because of the virus thing. There's a public footpath that comes down here, and we were chopping wood or something, just getting a few things ready, and I heard these voices coming down. I thought, oh, it's our first visitors from the outside world coming down the public footpath. 2 women and a big guy. And I said, let's call them over and ask them, you know, if they want some tea or something. And some people were like, oh no, thank you. You know, like we didn't expect to find a kind of tribal village while we're having a nice walk in the country. It's not on our map. But some of the guidebooks have it now. You'll turn left by the stream and you'll see the settlement. I thought it was a very, very nice way of calling it. But anyway, they came down. It was two English women, very nice, and this big Mongolian guy. And they were all friends. And the Mongolian guy had seen our yurt, which wasn't up, but it's a 34-foot yurt, big yurt by anyone's standards, lying there. And he was going, oh yeah, so how long until you guys put up that, you know? And we said, that's going to take a whole day. He said, no, 4 hours. And I boasting away, but I would love to have taken him up in it, but we weren't quite ready to put it up because our ring needed replacing. But anyway, the conversation went on like that, and he said, so you all live here, so what do? Do you just kill the sheep and eat them? And I thought it was a great question, right? And then he started telling us about how the Buddhist people, you know, from his culture do it, and how they make a small cut in the sheep while they're holding it, slide their hand up, and then press on the, is it the, well, I don't know which one, the aorta or something, just kill the blood. They just, yeah, just press on the, what is it? Carotid artery. Yeah, carotid artery. And then the sheep just passes out. He said they hate the way the Muslim people do it with the knife and all this. And I said, great, you must come down here and give us a workshop. That's definitely something we need to know. Apologies to all the vegans, but you know, there's no soybeans growing in these mountains, north-facing valley. Anyway, we won't go into all that. But I thought that really touched me, that he asked a straightforward question. It was just kind of, oh, you've got your tents, you got these green mountains, you must be living on meat, you know. He's a Mongolian. And have the heart to tell him that no, half of them are vegan and living on rice and dal. Okay, there's probably loads of areas I didn't cover. But those would be very deep conversations to have with each other about what you want to do. Getting together because you all have an ideal that you want to make work. It's just like marriage. You see her, she's beautiful, you want to be with her, you're lucky enough to end up in bed together and you're kissing and it's all lovely, and then the babies come and then what happens? Then it's all really fantastic forever and ever and ever. That's how it's going to be with your community as well. Hey, you want to grow vegetables? Yeah, hey, you want to do, oh yeah, I want to build that beautiful house there. Oh good, yeah, great, lovely, oh, let's go to bed together, hooray. And then 3 years later, and like, no, I want to sell my bit. But you can't, because you're a member of art. You have to sell it to someone, and we don't know. And the ownership and creating the dream it brings the disaster, you know. When it's just potential, it's just happening, as the I Ching will always tell you, you know, it's all spring energy, very beautiful. And then when it forms, it's like, well, it's been achieved, and then the problems start to appear. And once the dream is realized, it becomes a problem. Once the magic land has been achieved, it can become a problem. And then all the other cracks that were present, that you're in too much of a rush to head towards something that you want and that you desire, can show up. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. You know, there are some things you must have community to do, and there are some things you must relate to others to do. And having babies is one of them. You can't do that on your own. You can't make a baby on your own. You can't bring up a baby on your own. And that's the whole thing about it. It takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a child to make a village. It's like when everybody's proud of all the children, then you can have a real good village, and that's a natural thing that can happen, that you're proud of your own children, but proud of other people's children too. And then the sense of belonging comes naturally, arising sense of belonging. Natural desire to protect, natural desire to hold together and make sure everybody's okay. But because of the culture we're brought up in, and because we're not equipped for that, and because we weren't brought up in places like that, we don't know how to do it, and we can't remember what is okay to have a go and try. Just again, the last time maybe I say it, that being aware that there's an impending disaster about to break out at any point, and if you can be really not too bothered about success, not too bothered about solutions, but willing to explore those difficult areas, then maybe it's worth doing. Maybe.